Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris. Today, we will be previewing the 5 decks that I have begun to create and have created for you here on Mobalytics. I'm going to have a bunch more. They'll all be on, they're all public decks, so my thing is something about squirrels. I've never really used Mobalytics to look at other people's decks, but you can do that, and there'll probably be a bunch more by the time you're watching this video if you want more ideas as well, because I've got a whole host of different things. And of course, these decks are gonna be wrong in some ways. I might have forgotten cards for a start, so I'm sure you can suggest like, oh, in this deck, did you think about this one? And I probably just forgot about a card, or a card came out recently that I just couldn't think of, or it came out a long time ago that I couldn't remember either. So it's very possible that I've just completely forgotten certain cards, and will end up changing these decks as well. But as we go into them, let's start with an easy one, and that is Lulu Demacia. This is a deck that I think doesn't build itself, but it's I would say that this is probably the most likely to be a solid deck, just because, like, Lulu, I would say, is probably been the strongest champion revealed, and therefore, should be pretty strong. So we've got Lulu and Shen. Obviously, Lulu wants you to support things as much as you can, and she just goes really well, obviously with early challenges like Fleet Feather Tracker, and this is pretty similar to most lists. I think I've added in some of my own like personal favorite cards and stuff like that, and we've got like Blinding Assault as well as an extra challenger for Lulu to use. Obviously you can't really use the Scout, so it's not great, but yeah, here's the deck. So it's pretty basic standard Demacia. It's actually very similar to a deck that I played and really enjoyed playing before in a Fiora Shen list, basically like a mid-range Demacia, just like I'm just going to control the board, make all the favorable trades, and then I'm going to win the game. It's very similar in terms of that as well. Like, we've got the obvious starting package: Fleet Feather Tracker, Protector, War Chefs. We've got Green Gate Caretaker as a one-off, just to, somewhat ensure that we get a one-drop out as well. And then we're adding in Young Witch for the support and the potential quick attack, which is going really well with all of our challenges. And then, of course, we have a whole host of challenges as well, like LoR and Protege. Lawrence Chevalier is a card that I personally just really enjoy playing, and I think that in a deck like this, the one struggle that you might have is that if they can get somewhat reasonable trades against you, that you might struggle somewhat to then create enough card, like you're going to run out of steam somewhat, and then, they'll slowly grind you down. But Lawrence Chevalier is very good with barriers and, other stuff like Young Witch here as well, like any quick attack. It's really good for just developing a bunch of challenges. Even if he just goes face as well, often that's one thing as well that you don't often think with this card is if you've got a bunch of other challenges, you can just go face with Lawrence Chevalier and he'll get you the extra card as well. And the challenges in Demacia and Ionia are pretty good. Obviously the Demacia ones are pretty good. It won't include Fleet Feather Tracker, but it will include stuff like LoR and Protege. It includes a lot of cards we're already playing anyway. Protege, now the Screeching Dragon, which we'll get into, and of course Genevieve is like an absolute premium hit, for obvious reasons. And in Ionia, I think, is it just Usari, which is the elusive challenger. It's not a great card, but when you come up against elusives, it can save you quite a lot as a defensive blocker as well. It's actually won me a few games, that sort of combination of where I'm playing against elusives and I need a blocker and I get Usari off Chevalier and I win the game that way. It's quite interesting. We've also got Screeching Dragon here as a one-of. Normally by this point in the game, we're going to want to have a pretty stable board anyway, but Screeching Dragon, honestly, I might increase. Obviously, we're going to be killing probably quite a few things. It's got 4 attack, it's challenger, it's got Fury as well, so it's going to get just bigger and bigger and bigger, and we can kill things quite easily. And then of course Genevieve for the big potential ending. Combine that with stuff like Rush, which goes really well with Valor, by the way. Rush, of course, will pretty much allow Valor to kill 2 things for free if we need it. We've got Key Guardian, for the extra barriers for Shen and, just cycling through our deck. Obviously, Single Combat and Repost are just really good cards and are going to fit into the deck pretty well. Obviously, there's some changes, and some changes will be meta dependent as well. Certain things like Rush might not be really that good if there's nothing that you're really finding to kill, or I mean, if Repost isn't doing anything and it's a bunch of small units, you might want Prismatic Barrier instead. Like, you know, Screeching Dragon might be wrong instead of Swiftwing Lancer. With all these decks, there's going to be some things that are wrong. You know, if Make It Rain is like prevalent everywhere, then Young Witch might be wrong. And you might want Ranger's Resolve as well. So there's a whole bunch of things that could change with the deck, but I think as a standard solid list that this can go places and be pretty strong as well. And as I say, like Lulu is just pretty strong. She doesn't need to see you support. She gives, and then once she levels up, she gets the help picks every round. If you can't remember, Lulu was quite a while ago, which is going to give either an enemy vulnerable or your thing barrier. We're probably going to use it for barrier in this case, but a 1-mana barrier with Shen, obviously pretty good. And the fact that we've already got a bunch of challengers anyway, you can see that, yeah, it's like a pretty solid, just stable combo deck. Like, that's mid-range. It's going to be pure value, and I think it's going to be really strong. And of all the decks I'm going to show you today, this is the one that I'm probably the most confident in, that's like just going to be strong, because everything about the deck just screams pretty good. Like, it's just, you know, hey, take a good synergy cards, take some good champions, and make a pretty good deck. So on to the next one, which is Gem Lee Sin. And Gem Lee Sin, a deck I'm very excited for. And we get to see Targon. This is the first Targon deck. So we are combining, of course, Lee Sin and Tariq. Lee Sin, by the way, who it seems like they're going to change, they've said. I wouldn't be surprised if they make him 5 mana instead. And maybe like a 3/5 for 5 mana so that he can just come down earlier and affect the game earlier, based on what the patch note says. Yes, there was patch notes as well. If you haven't read them, go and read them. Fury of the North got slightly nerfed, as well as Trifarian Assessor. It wasn't big, and that was pretty much it. But they said, you know, Lee Sin's probably going to get changed next time, and I'm really excited about that. I mean, I'm really excited for this deck anyway, but if he does come down to 5 mana, then this deck, and you can go Tariq into Lee Sin, then that could be, you know, pretty strong. So let's talk about this. So what's the idea? Well, the idea here is to use Lee Sin, give him a bunch of gems. Is there a way I can see gems? I'm not sure, but gems essentially are 1 mana burst speed spells that give something an extra attack and heal it 1, and that's a grant effect on the attack. So essentially the idea is you play Lee Sin, you play a bunch of gems throughout the game to cast your 7 spells, and you've got, as you can see, quite a lot of spells already. And then you get Lee Sin down, and you give him a bunch of extra attack with the gems, or you know, help him out with like Mentor of the Stones. Excuse me. Or, you know, Tariq, you cast a bunch of spells on Tariq, it copies it onto Lee Sin. You make Lee Sin even bigger. You combine him with something like Zenith Blade to give him Overwhelm. And then you go crazy and kill them pretty quickly with Lee Sin. Because the problem with Lee Sin has been that he just isn't killing quick enough a lot of the time. But with Zenith Blade, he really could deal some damage. And the good thing about Lee Sin as well is, you know, a lot of these champions, a lot of people I think are thinking, well, what if they get hushed? What if they get hushed? Lee Sin has a very high health stat. And if you're playing with gems as well, you know, you're going to be able to heal him as well. So even if they do hush him, somewhat unlikely that thing is going to kill him, especially when it's leveled up. Of course, he's going to be a 4/7. So there isn't many things with 7 attack, and if you know your opponent is playing Hush, you just don't challenge the one with 7 attack. Like, and yeah, you might lose out on the Dragon's Rage or whatever, but it's ultimately not that big of a deal. Like, you know, you're still going to be fine, and Lee Sin's going to be fine at the end of the round, and then you can go on. So let's talk about the cards that we have included. Of course, we want gems, so we've got Gift Giver here. Then we've got the early survival Ionia package with Claws and Eye of the Dragon. The numbers here on Claws might be a 2 of, and you might be surprised that Mentor of the Stones is only a 2 of in this deck. But I was just thinking, what are we playing other than Eye of the Dragon on turn 2 that would be buffed by Mentor of the Stones? And I didn't know, and I was like, oh, maybe that's wrong. Maybe we should not be playing that. We could potentially go Mentor into Tariq. I might change that into 2 Claws, 3 Mentor. It's probably a bit better. And Solari Priestess, of course, is going to give us the potential to get one of the 4, 5, or 6 drops, which are all very solid cards, particularly in this deck. You know, the 4/1 is a fine 3/4 that also gives us a chance of finding a card that we might want. The 5 drop is a 5/5 challenger, which, you know, goes pretty well with the whole added support will help us give us board control, and the 6 mana is going to give us an elusive, which if we increase the attack of is going to be nuts, of course, and a lifesteal 4/3 as well, helping us survive and or push damage later on in the game. So Slaughter Priestess seemed like a pretty easy choice there as well. And then we've got our spells. Now, luckily for us, Targon provided a bunch more, like 2 mana cycle, do something and cycle, in Guiding Touch and Pale Cascade. Both these cards are incredible in this deck. With Lee Sin, you know, we might want to be, an Eye of the Dragon and Claws of the Dragon, we might want to be casting 2 spells around, and so Pale Cascade is just absolutely insane. It's like Transfusion, but apart from, like, we lose out on 1 health, but also draw a card, like, just completely insane. We're still playing Key Guardian and Sonic Wave as good ways of spell enablers, of course. Sonic Wave particularly pretty good as well. We've got 1 Bastion, which is, again, just to help Lee Sin if they do go for something like Vengeance or, you know, Ruination or something like that. Like, that could be a really strong as well. Because Lee Sin's big bonus is that he can't really be killed that easily through spells like Grasp or, you know, Mystic Shot or stuff like that. He's got such a high health stat as well, and the fact that you can give him Barrier pretty easily just means that it's very difficult for them to, but they can Will of Ionia, Vengeance, Ruination, these things, but Bastion will help us against that as well, which could be pretty neat. Hush, of course, I don't know if this is correct or not, but the card could potentially stop some decks. This is going to be somewhat meta dependent. It might get cut. We'll see. Zenith Blade I've explained, obviously insane with Lee Sin. We could even go Zenith Blade onto Tariq, use Tariq to support Lee Sin and go crazy. Concussive Bombs is just a nuts card, and Deep Meditation is going to draw us even more, and, you know, we are playing a lot of spells, and, you know, Hush is decent in this deck because you can play it twice and it only is 1 card, so that's also pretty nice. You know, if we've got the spare mana, which we might towards the end of the game, and we need to just hush either multiple things or just get the second spell trigger for whatever reason to maybe get Deep Meditation to be cheaper or whatever, yeah, that's pretty nice as well. Tariq actually is something that I'm kind of unsure on. We are going to be casting gems, so that's going to be pretty nice. We do have, you know, some decent options like Pale Cascade. Guiding Touch will actually draw you 2 cards, as will Pale Cascade. If Pale Cascade is the second one, it will also draw you 2 cards as well. Sonic Wave, obviously not the best, but it's just the first spell you cast on him, so you could cast the Resonating Strike on Tariq and give something else. Bastion obviously is pretty good with him, and as I say, Zenith Blade pretty insane, or just the gems that we're creating as well, to, you know, maybe level Tariq up. You could also put Arbiter of the Peak in here. I didn't think that we had enough supports to really warrant that. I don't think this is an Arbiter of the Peak deck, so we'll stick with this for now, but I think that this archetype, especially if Lee Sin becomes lesser mana cost or comes online earlier, will certainly be pretty competitive as well. So next up, we've got one that I'm sure you're all dying to see, and that is Spooky Dragon, is what I've called this one. It is Thresh, Aurelian Sol. Now, of course, Aurelian Sol, I'm sure a lot of people are super hyped up for. It's like Deep, but even deeper, apart from in the sky. And you get what I mean. Like, it's just big, crazy things happening, you know, and I remember when we were at the first couple days of the last expansion, and Deep was, you could not play a game without seeing Nautilus or Maokai or just a bunch of big sea monsters. And what's interesting was, I remember when Nautilus came out and people thought, this isn't good, no one will play this. And then, you know, Nautilus is like, well, you have to play Nautilus in Deep decks now, that's like common knowledge. But I remember when he first came out, people were like, you know, you won't play Nautilus in a Deep deck, why do you need that card? Turns out he was the key all along. So, and a lot of people said similar things about Aurelian Sol. I think it's more true of Aurelian Sol because he's 10 mana, but maybe he's crazy as well, and will be, you know, seen as such. And the whole idea, of course, is Thresh hopefully is going to pull out Aurelian Sol, you know, turn 7, something like that. Like, at which point, you've probably won the game. He's got Spell Shield, and that's pretty nuts as well, because, of course, an opponent then has to commit 2 spells to him. and you know, he's just going to create you so much value. You don't get the play effect, which is a little, you know, frustrating, but just overall, just a crazy card if you can get this out before turn 10, right? Now, leveling up Aurelion Sol won't be easy for this deck. I would say we don't have the highest attack power on our allies, but of course we can, you know, sort of. The idea is you get him out on turn 7 so that, you know, you at round start you keep creating these random Celestials and hope that, you know, you can get something massive from one of them and just go crazy. And obviously we are a control deck, and thus, you know, we've got Hapless and Warden's Prey. My reasoning for this is when you build this deck, you might be very tempted to put in a bunch of spells. You know, let's get all the control tools. Let's just get every single one. And you quickly realize a problem. The deck is built around Thresh, and you need units to die. And so, I mean, obviously you can kill the opponent's units as well, but it helps if you've got some of your own that you can get rid of. I did think about, could I play Curse Keeper and Blighted Caretaker? But I just thought that this deck is never gonna be able to, like, push. Like, even if you did go turn 2 Keeper into Caretaker and then pushed a big damage that turn, you're still going to be the control deck, and so I didn't think that was really worth it. We've also got some good options. Solari Shieldbreaker obviously is a great defensive card to put down on turn 2 and will just help us get further on in the game, and then go back to a 3-2 and probably hopefully die quickly for Thresh. And then we got the Invokes, of course. Lunari Priestess, you know, I doubt you're ever going to play on 3, but that's fine. Because, you know, Solari Priestess we will be playing on 3, and hopefully we can find, you know, a 4, 5, or 6 mana card, which will then help us level up Sol if that's what we get to. And, you know, if we get the 6 mana one with two of them, you know, then maybe they will die as well and help Thresh. And the whole point is we need Thresh to level up pretty much. That's how we're going to win. And then one Ledros as well, just because, you know, if it all goes wrong, the Thresh dies and they, you know, kill Thresh and everything is going wrong, well, we've got backup Ledros to, you know, put down on the board and be a big threat, you know, and half the Nexus, and maybe we can just win through that. Then, of course, we got Glimpse, Guiding Touch here to help keep us alive. This is probably going on the Nexus. Pale Cascade, you know, again, just a crazy card. Unspeakable Horror, you might wonder why the card's in there, but the Nightfall effect can potentially give us an extra card in hand, and that could be pretty nice. We're not going to be draining from the Nexus, I doubt it, unless maybe we combo with Ledros or something crazy, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be draining from the Nexus very much. But you know, we could get a Nightfall unit that again can die for Thresh. Like this this is our goal. This is our one goal, to just create units to die. Bastion is obviously to help save Thresh if we need to save Thresh. This might be a 2-of, to be honest, in this deck. And also once Aurelion Sol is out, of course it can save him, which is pretty nice. Hush, we are of course a control deck, so you know, it fits in pretty well. And then you'll see I have cut down on the control elements with 2 Grasp, 2 Whales, and 2 Vengeance. The numbers on these I think are always, again, somewhat meta dependent, and so I've just gone for 2 of all of them right now. But you know, if it's super aggro, wide aggro, then you might want to go 3 Whales. If there's a bunch of good Grasp targets, then you might want to go 3 Grasp. And if it's a bunch of, you know, Sejuanis and stuff, then you might want to go 3 Vengeance. And then 1 Atrocity, because of course with Ledros and Sol we do have 4 decent targets. If at any point they do find a way to kill Sol, and obviously if they do go in for double removal on Sol and then you Atrocity it, you're going to be feeling pretty good about it. So that's the deck. It's probably the first one I'll play because it's Aurelion Sol and it's fun, and I might tweak it again and see, you know, if we need more units or not as many units, and see what's up. So let's take a look at this one. This is Leona Swain. Leona, I think everyone agrees, is just pretty strong. She's not the most exciting champion in the world, but she's just pretty strong. And so I was thinking, what's the best way to play Leona? And I just thought maybe Swain. Obviously the stuns can be used with Swain pretty well, and that's pretty nice, and everything just feels pretty good. And Leona's signature spell goes pretty well. It gives Overwhelm, right? I think so. I'm not sure, but I think it does. And this is the deck that we've gone with. Obviously we've got the Daybreak cards: Solari Soldier, Solari Shieldbreaker, Solari Priestess, and Ravun. Dayman, as Swim has called him, which is, I mean, I think what I called him in my video as well, when he was revealed, Dayman. And yeah, all the Daybreak cards, of course, to help level up Leona, and, you know, potentially stun even more. And then, of course, some Swain cards, like Imperial Demolitionist, can go pretty well with the Daybreak cards. Like, if you think you put it, you say you were on turn 4 and you draw Solari Shieldbreaker and you got Demolition in hand, you play this, it gets the 4 health this round, so then you just play Demo on it. They don't kill it, you get the 2 free damage for Swain, you know, which could help you close out the game towards the end as well. Pretty nice. Of course, Leviathan is in here as well. That's how you're probably going to be winning the game. And then you've got Flock, which obviously with the extra stuns from Leona is going to be pretty good. You've got Pale Cascade here. Again, I mean, I think this card has been 3 of in every single one because it's just absolutely crazy. Death Hand, good card. 1 Hush again. Don't know if that's correct or not. Obviously, all the Swain tools, Death Hand, Noxian Fervor, like, you know, these are pretty standard, I think. Then Zenith Blade as well. It does have, of course, Daybreak. It can go on Swain and be completely nuts. And yeah, that's kind of the whole reason it's in there. And it will draw you an extra Zenith Blade, which is also pretty nice. That, you know, you could put maybe on whatever you find from Solari Priestess, or, you know, put on Ravon even and give him, you know, make him a 6/7 overwhelm. It all works pretty nice. And then Sunburst. Sunburst, of course, Daybreak as well, and, you know, really goes well with Swain, of course, because it's going to half level up Swain. We might have too much level up of Swain. This could be some of the cuts as well, to just go more into sort of just solid cards instead of thinking about Swain as much. It's very possible, and yeah, I just think this deck is just solid. Again, I think the deck is just solid. Like, Leviathan Swain has shown, as you know, sort of proven to be a reliable way to win. We again might want one, I've already forgotten the name of it, but you know, the thing that gives Spell Shield to save Swain on those later turns, or save the Leviathan. It's very possible, and I might make that change. But other than that, I just think it's really solid, and Leona's going to be stunning things, and Swain's going to be stunning things, and, you know, we give Swain Overwhelm, it's like he's going to hit that board, and then he's going to, you know, go crazy, and they're going to feel pretty bad, and I think we're going to feel pretty good. On to the last deck, and this one is called Day and Night, and it don't sue me, and it is a Nightfall deck with some Daybreak cards in there as well, and it's an aggro deck. I'm really, this is probably the one that I'm really not as sure about, and I'm just not sure about Nocturne and the Shadow Isles ones in general. I just feel a bit uneasy about Nocturne and then the whole thing, but I'm going to give it a try for sure and see if it can work. So we've got, obviously, Nightfall, Diana, Nocturne. It's going to be somewhat aggressive. Of course, we're playing Lenari Dustbringer, like this is the most auto-include card ever, but we are also playing Solari Soldier, and this is where I think the deck is going to be somewhat interesting, because, and we are also playing the Solari Shieldbreaker as well. And the reason is because they're just solid units that you can play, and, you know, for 1 mana, like, this is a good Daybreak trigger, and then you play a Nightfall card. That's the thing, you're not gonna play this on turn 1, I think, most of the time. I mean, if you've got Lenari Dustbringer in hand, you're auto gonna Dustbringer before you Solari Soldier, and you're gonna use these 2 cards because they're relatively cheap. You're gonna use them to combine with the Nightfall cards instead. You know, you're going to go on turn 3 Shield Bearer into Onlooker, and then, you know, Shield Bearer, like, it's a 3/6. So they're either taking a bad block that they don't want to, or they're taking 3 damage, which in an aggro deck is pretty nice. And then you still got a 3/2 body overall. Like, that's pretty good. You know, if a 3/2 said, you know, if there was a 2 mana card that said a 3/2, like, deal 3 to the enemy Nexus, you know, next round, and then, you know, I'm a 3/2 as well, like, that replayed all the time. And so I think Shieldbreaker is both defensive and very aggressive the turn it comes down, and it's just a very solid card. And as I say, you're going to combine these 2 with the Nightfall cards to hopefully then get the Nightfall triggers you need, and, you know, push even more damage. And we've got Fading Memories and Sapling Toss. Fading Memories, I'm pretty sure could be correct, and probably is correct. just because it allows you to, you know, create either a Daybreak card here for a trigger, or you copy one of their things, of course. And being ephemeral isn't the worst thing in the world. Sapling Toss is, you know, a card that I'm unsure about, but I think it's better than the 1 mana. I can't remember the name of the card, but you know, the one that gives 1 attack and spell shield. I think this is better than it. I think I'd rather have the challenger. And obviously you're going to play this on turns where, on your opponent's turn, and that could be pretty neat to play on the opponent's turn, because you might not feel like you have like the most things to play on that turn. Like the Daybreak cards you're going to want to play on your attacking turn, so having something to play for 1 mana on the opponent's turn to then, you know, trigger, get a Crescent Guardian or Doom Beast or whatever, is going to be pretty useful as well. Pale Cascade, I mean, this one's a Nightfall deck, so, you know, actually does fit in more, but of course, again, just crazy. Stalking Shadows, speaking of crazy cards, this, if any card's going to carry this deck, it will be this one, because this card is genuinely crazy. And then Unspeakable Horror as well, extra Nightfall stuff, you can go face with it. I am a little unsure, just because of Nocturne and because we are board centric, but we don't have the beefiest units. I mean, Crescent Guardian is like fine, but I am a little unsure. We could force our opponent into some bad trades, and like, but I think there is a possibility that Diana would rather be run in a sort of more mid-range deck. If you actually look at Diana's level up condition, it's like Challenger Quick Attack, which is really good, but not necessarily aggro. Like, it's really good for making favorable trades, kind of like what Demacia would expect to do, but not so much what an aggro deck wants to do. So I'm a little unsure about the champions, but I will give it a go. And Stalking Shadow is an insane card, and this is a very good deck to put it in because, you know, we've got quite a few follows as well. You might want some. The thing is, there isn't like a big, like 5 mana like finishing card or 6 mana finishing card that I think is reliable enough in these 2 colors that's gonna get you there, and that I think is maybe what this archetype is lacking, like a 6 mana, like, just, you know, like Cythria. You know what I mean? Like, it's just missing like a Cythria that you can just like have a board full of creatures and then go, now I win. And I know Nocturne has a similar effect, but you kind of want that a bit later, I think. So I don't know. This one I'm probably the most unsure about, but I think it will be fun as well. And yeah, I think that's gonna do it. Have I gone through them all? I think I have. I think I'm gonna open up with Spooky Dragon because those of you who are or aren't aware, I mean, no, you won't be aware, but I'm certainly aware that I've never played a deep deck on this channel. And you know why? Because everyone played deep in the first 2 days, and then everyone figured out what a good deep deck looked like because they played it for the first 2 days. And then I was like, well, everyone's done deep anyway, so I can't really make a video on deep because everyone's just done it. Yeah, and these are my, you know, these are my decks, and I love deck building, and I've got a bunch more ideas, and I'll probably copy them over here as well, and this page will be full of just new decks that you can enjoy. So that's going to end this one. Thank you so much for watching. My name's been Chris. The deck codes, I think. Can I copy the deck codes? I don't know. We'll find out. They'll be there when I can do it. And yeah, have a really nice day.